Have you ever wondered why you, as an empath, seem to suffer the most profound betrayals from the very people who claim to love you the most? Jung discovered something that explains this painful pattern, and it's far deeper and more unsettling than you might imagine. Through his work, Jung identified a specific type of person repeatedly drawn to empaths, individuals he called false lovers. These aren't just incompatible partners. They are people who are mesmerized by your emotional gifts, but deep down, secretly resent you for possessing the very thing they've lost within themselves. These relationships unfold with an almost terrifying predictability, a phase of intense fascination, followed by a slow, systematic undermining of your confidence, and finally, a bitter resentment that masquerades as love. Jung's groundbreaking realization was this: empaths don't just inspire admiration. In those who have buried their own emotional authenticity, you trigger a powerful and destructive envy. This creates a toxic dynamic where the people you let closest to you pretend to cherish the exact qualities they are unconsciously driven to destroy. Today, we're going deep into Jung's discovery. I'll reveal the hidden psychological mechanism that turns your greatest gift, your empathy, into a target for those who have abandoned their own emotional worlds. This pattern became chillingly clear through Jung's work with a patient he referred to as the emotional mirror, a woman whose empathy was so pure it starkly illuminated the emotional poverty in others, provoking an unconscious hatred from those who claimed to adore her. You already know a truth that most people refuse to even acknowledge. Your empathy wasn't a casual choice. It was forged in the fires of survival. What I call the empathic wound almost always begins in childhood, a time when love was conditional, and your emotional and physical safety depended on your ability to read every micro-expression, every subtle shift in mood, every unspoken tension in your environment. You didn't learn empathy. You became it. Jung observed this exact pattern again and again in his clinical practice. The empath develops what he termed psychic permeability. That feeling of being unable to distinguish where your own emotions end and another person's begin. You feel everything. But here's the crucial part. You've probably sensed deep in your bones. This was never a weakness. It was a brilliant adaptation. You learned to navigate a volatile world by becoming a highly sophisticated emotional radar system. Jung documented the case of a 28-year-old artist named Elena, whose profound empathic gifts had led her into 3 consecutive relationships that followed the exact same tragic arc. Each partner began by worshiping her sensitivity, calling it a beautiful, rare, almost magical quality. They felt seen by her in a way they never had before. But within months, that same sensitivity was reframed. It was no longer a gift. It became too much. Overwhelming, dramatic. You've lived this, haven't you? The very person who was drawn to the depth of your ocean suddenly starts complaining about the waves. They begin with subtle, corrosive comments. You're overthinking again. Why does everything have to be so deep? And the classic, you're just being too sensitive. What they are really saying, without even knowing it, is this: your emotional authenticity is a painful reminder of the authenticity I have abandoned in myself. Jung called this the mirror effect. Your empathy doesn't just see them, it holds up a flawless mirror reflecting their own emotional desolation. And rather than face that barren reflection, they attack the mirror, they attack you. As Jung powerfully wrote, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But he knew that most people will choose the temporary comfort of irritation over the difficult work of understanding. Elena's first partner, Marcus, was a textbook example of this pattern. He was utterly captivated by her ability to sense his moods, often before he was even consciously aware of them. He felt a profound connection, but that fascination curdled into resentment. It's like living with a mind reader, he would complain to his friends. She knows what I'm feeling before I do, and it makes me feel completely exposed. This is the painful paradox you've experienced. Your gift of making others feel seen is the very thing that makes them feel dangerously exposed. But here is the insight from Jung that changes everything. Their discomfort is not about you being too much. It's about them feeling too little. They have disconnected from their own emotional truth so profoundly that your authenticity doesn't feel like a connection. It feels like a judgment. The campaign of what I call sensitivity shaming begins the moment they realize your empathy threatens the emotional numbness they've carefully constructed to survive. They can't admit to themselves that they've abandoned their own depths, so they must convince you and themselves that depth itself is the problem. You've heard the arsenal of phrases they use. You're too emotional. You analyze everything to death. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Every single one of these statements is a projection. It is a confession of their own terror of feeling. Jung observed that projection is one of the most common and unconscious psychic phenomena, and empaths, with their open and receptive nature, become the perfect screen onto which others can project their disowned, unfelt emotions. You have sensed this profound truth even if you couldn't articulate it. The very people who loudly proclaim their love for you often harbor a secret, corrosive resentment toward your emotional gifts. What I call empathic envy operates on a fundamentally different, far more destructive level than simple jealousy. Jealousy wants to possess what another has. It wants to be like you. Envy, on the other hand, wants to destroy what another has, precisely because they have it and you don't. Jung understood that envy emerges from what he termed the shadow, that vast, unconscious part of the psyche containing everything we've rejected, repressed, or disowned about ourselves. When someone has systematically buried their emotional sensitivity and authenticity to navigate a seemingly disconnected world, encountering an empath acts as a profound trigger. Your presence sparks a deep, often unconscious activation of their own shadow. You are a living reminder of the part of themselves they had to sacrifice. You already recognize this insidious pattern. The relationship typically begins with an intense idealization of your empathy. You understand me like no one else. It's like you can see right through me. You have such a rare gift. But this initial idealization is, chillingly, the very first stage of envy. They're not truly celebrating your gift. They're resentful that you possess what they've consciously or unconsciously lost. Elena's second relationship, with a man named David, demonstrated this dynamic with chilling precision. David was a highly successful corporate lawyer, a man who had systematically numbed his emotions to climb the unforgiving corporate ladder. When he met Elena, her emotional depth captivated him. She could read people instantly, he recounted to Jung. It was like having a superpower by association. He was fascinated by her. But that fascination slowly, inevitably, turned into resentment when Elena's gift began to reveal uncomfortable, inconvenient truths about David's own carefully constructed emotional emptiness. She would instinctively sense his profound sadness after difficult cases, his deep-seated fear of vulnerability, his suppressed anger at feeling trapped and unfulfilled in his highly successful career. Instead of facing these raw, uncomfortable truths about himself, David began to attack the messenger. Jung meticulously documented how David initiated what I call light-dimming behaviors. He would deliberately interrupt Elena whenever she shared a subtle emotional insight. He'd laugh dismissively, a sarcastic, cutting sound, when she attempted to express her deeper feelings. He even began jokingly, but cuttingly, calling her the feelings police, and openly suggesting that she was exhausting to be around. You have experienced this systematic dimming of your light, haven't you? The very person who once celebrated your unique depth now treats it like a burden, an inconvenience, a flaw. They start making dismissive jokes about your sensitivity in front of others, rolling their eyes when you share a profound insight, or suggesting that you're reading too much into things. Jung wrote, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality. But instead of confronting that immense challenge within themselves, the envious person attempts to eliminate the mirror. They try to eliminate you. They cannot genuinely destroy their own shadow, so they desperately try to destroy yours, or at least the reflection of their own shadow that you present. What you have intuitively sensed is absolutely correct. Their relentless attacks on your sensitivity are, in fact, unwitting confessions of their own profound emotional bankruptcy. When they call you too much, they are unconsciously admitting they are too little. When they accuse you of overthinking, They are revealing that they have stopped thinking altogether about anything that genuinely matters to their soul. Jung observed that envy is inherently the antagonist of the fortunate. And your emotional authenticity, your innate gift, represents the ultimate fortune to those who have, in their own way, sold their souls for social acceptance, external validation, or material success. But here's a crucial, often overlooked insight from Jungian psychology. Their envy serves a very specific and insidious psychological function for them. By constantly attacking and diminishing your gifts, they temporarily alleviate the excruciating pain of their own emotional poverty. Each time they manage to make you feel smaller, to doubt yourself, they feel momentarily better about their own emotional numbness and emptiness. This is precisely why the attacks never truly stop. They need to keep diminishing you to avoid the terrifying prospect of having to face themselves. Jung vividly called this psychological vampirism. They feed on your vibrant emotional energy, taking without giving, while simultaneously resenting you fiercely for possessing that very energy. You've likely wondered, with a deep ache in your heart, how someone can profess to love you while systematically undermining the very core of your being. What I call false love isn't always conscious, malicious deception. More often, it's an unconscious act of self-protection, cleverly wrapped in the seductive language of affection. Jung identified what he termed persona relationships, connections based not on genuine intimacy and authentic connection, but on what each person can provide to maintain the other's carefully constructed false self, their persona. The false lover doesn't love you, the authentic, empathic you. They love what you do for them. They love how your empathy makes them feel profoundly understood and cared for, without ever having to do the difficult, uncomfortable emotional work themselves. You already know this feeling, don't you? It's that relationship where you constantly pour out your emotional labor, offering deep insights and boundless understanding, but receive only superficial affection or shallow responses in return. It's where your vulnerability is treated as mere entertainment, rather than a sacred truth. Elena's third relationship revealed the most sophisticated and perhaps cruelest form of false love. Elena's third relationship, with Robert, proved to be the most subtle, yet perhaps the cruelest, manifestation of false love. Robert, a man of considerable intellect, was astute enough to recognize the immense value of empathy. He understood its power, its allure. However, he was far too emotionally wounded and avoidant to ever cultivate such a profound capacity within himself. Instead, he ingeniously crafted what Jung vividly termed a parasitic dynamic. He subtly, yet strategically, positioned himself as Elena's grand, emotional project. He made me feel utterly needed, Elena confessed to Jung during one of their sessions. He would meticulously share his deepest childhood traumas, his most profound fears, his most ambitious dreams with me. I genuinely believed we were building an incredibly deep, intimate connection. But Jung, with his unparalleled insight into the human psyche, recognized the insidious pattern immediately. Robert was not seeking genuine intimacy. He was expertly using Elena's empathy. He leveraged her boundless capacity to process his own complex, unresolved emotions, all while skillfully sidestepping the uncomfortable, often painful work of developing his own emotional maturity and resilience. This, for empaths, is the most insidious and heartbreaking form of false love. It's the person who treats your profound empathy not as a cherished gift, but as a readily available service to which they are inherently entitled. They meticulously download their emotional pain, their anxieties, their unresolved traumas onto you, expecting you to absorb it, to process it, to miraculously fix it for them. And then, in a chilling twist of psychological irony, they often resent you for being capable of precisely what they are utterly unwilling or unable to do for themselves. You have, without a doubt, experienced this profound emotional one-sidedness. It's the individual who invariably comes to you with every single crisis, every minor upset, every complex dilemma, expecting boundless support, deep understanding, and unwavering presence. Yet, this same person mysteriously disappears the moment you are in need of comfort, a listening ear, or genuine emotional reciprocation. It's the one who demands that you intricately understand the labyrinthine complexities of their inner world, but who shows not the slightest flicker of interest in understanding yours. They take your invaluable emotional labor for granted, offering nothing substantial, authentic, or reciprocal in return. Jung famously articulated, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But in the context of false love, only one person truly transforms. The empath becomes utterly depleted, emotionally drained, and often traumatized, while the false lover remains frustratingly, rigidly unchanged, having offloaded their burdens without internal growth." What I call love bombing followed by love dimming stands as one of the clearest, most unmistakable signs of false love. They initially overwhelm you with intense attention, effusive praise, and profound, almost theatrical, admiration for your sensitivity. They make you feel as though your empathy is the most beautiful, most precious, most extraordinary thing they have ever encountered. But this is not genuine appreciation. It is a strategic act of acquisition. They are not celebrating your gift. They are subtly, unconsciously, claiming it as their own emotional resource. And once they feel they have unfettered, unchallenged access to your empathy, they commence the insidious process of controlling and diminishing it. Why? Because deep down, in the unconscious depths of their being, they know they don't deserve what they are incapable of reciprocating. Jung profoundly observed that where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking. False lovers are driven almost entirely by this will to power. They harbor an unconscious yet desperate need to control your empathy, to subtly twist it to serve their own profound emotional needs, while simultaneously preventing it from ever exposing the stark reality of their own emotional poverty. You have undoubtedly sensed this unsettling power dynamic. It manifests in the insidious ways they make you feel guilty for simply having your own needs, for attempting to set healthy boundaries. It's in the way they strategically position themselves as the rational one, the stable one, and you as the emotional, the unstable, or the dramatic one. They cleverly frame your profound emotional depth as instability, and their own carefully cultivated emotional shallowness as a sign of grounded stability. If you've experienced someone claiming to love your empathy while simultaneously, slowly, subtly trying to dim your light, comment below. I see through false love. Now you have likely experienced something truly insidious that Jung termed psychological poisoning. This is the gradual, systematic process by which false lovers skillfully convince you that your greatest strength, your profound empathy, is actually your greatest weakness, a fundamental flaw to be corrected, something to be ashamed of. What I call gift gaslighting is their primary, most devastating weapon against your empathic authenticity. Jung understood that projection is the core psychological mechanism by which people avoid confronting their own terrifying shadow. Instead of facing their own emotional numbness and emptiness, they project that numbness onto you, labeling it as rationality or logic. Instead of owning their own deep-seated fear of emotional depth, they project that fear onto you, calling your depth instability or being dramatic. You already know, in your bones, how this feels. It's the gradual, agonizing erosion of confidence in your own perceptions. It's the creeping, insidious doubt about whether you truly are too sensitive too much. It's the way their constant, subtle criticism makes you question the very gift that has guided you, protected you, and defined you throughout your entire life. Elena's relationship with Robert demonstrated this poisoning process perfectly. He began subtly questioning her insights. Are you sure you're reading that correctly? Maybe you're projecting your own feelings onto them? I think you're overanalyzing. Each seemingly innocent question was meticulously designed to plant a seed of doubt about her empathic accuracy. And because empaths are naturally self-reflective and eager to understand, Elena, tragically, began second-guessing herself. Maybe I am too sensitive, she confided to Jung. Maybe I do read too much into things. This is the cruelest aspect of empathic abuse. They use your own innate thoughtfulness and your willingness to consider other perspectives as the very weapon to make you doubt your own deepest truth. Jung observed that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And false lovers mercilessly exploit your journey towards self-acceptance by cunningly making you believe that embracing your empathy is actually embracing a flaw, rather than celebrating a magnificent gift. What I call reality revision is their systematic, relentless attempt to rewrite your empathic experiences. When you sense their anger, even when it's palpable, they adamantly insist they are not angry. When you feel their withdrawal, they claim nothing has changed. When you detect their underlying resentment, they accuse you of being paranoid. You have lived this maddening, disorienting experience. Your empathy screams one thing, but they insist on a completely contradictory reality. Over time, this creates what Jung called psychic dissociation, a terrifying split between what you feel and what you are told is real. The false lover's ultimate goal isn't to help you become more accurate in your empathic perceptions, it's to make you abandon those perceptions entirely. They want you to become utterly dependent on their version of reality, instead of ever trusting your own profound emotional intelligence. Jung famously wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But false lovers tragically convince you that who you truly are is a fundamental problem to be solved, rather than a sacred gift to be celebrated. You've probably noticed how their projection escalates over time. First, they question your specific insights. Then, they question your empathic ability in general. Finally, they question your entire emotional stability. This insidious progression is designed to make you completely dependent on their twisted interpretation of reality. But here's what you've always known, deep down. Even when doubt crept in, your empathy has been right far more often than it's been wrong. The uncomfortable truths you've sensed have almost invariably proven accurate over time. Your emotional radar has protected you from countless situations that your logical mind would have completely missed. Jung understood that your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. The false lover, in their profound fear, tries desperately to convince you that looking inside is dangerous, that trusting your inner vision is foolish, that awakening is actually a form of delusional sleeping. Their projection is always, ultimately, a confession. When they call you unstable, they are revealing their own deep-seated instability. When they call you too emotional, they are admitting their own emotional poverty. When they call you unrealistic, they are confessing their own profound disconnection from authentic reality. If you've recognized yourself in this profound empathic transformation, if you're ready to step into your power and live as a truly sovereign empath, then I invite you to comment below with, "I choose authentic love over false comfort." Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into Jung's timeless insights. Your journey towards self-discovery and reclaiming your unique gifts is just beginning. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the depths of the psyche. See you in the next dimension.